Hi, I'm Rahel Philipose and you are listening to Three Things, the Indian Express News Show. In this episode, we talk about the Gujarat High Court's observations on Rahul Gandhi's defamation case. We also talk about community-led efforts in Punjab to restore mosques. But first, we talk about West Bengal. On Saturday, panchayat polls were held in Bengal, and just as we have witnessed in the past, this time too they were marred by violence, resulting in the death of 17 people. In fact, the Indian Express's Shantanu Chowdhury, who covered the polls for the paper, told us that one person was killed every hour.
The polling started from 7 a.m. and since the start of the polling, in every hour at least one death were reported from the district. By that time the polling ended at 5 p.m. there were 12 people had already been died in political violence.
And this violence, he says, continued even after the elections got over, leading to a bitter row between the political parties in the state.
The opposition parties trained their gun at the ruling Trinamool Congress for orchestrating the violence, but the Trinamool Congress said that out of the 12 people who were killed, 7 were from the ruling party members. So they said that the opposition parties had actually done the violence or at least gave instigation to the violence, which resulted in the death of so many Trinamool Congress workers.
Now, as we mentioned before, political violence is not new to Bengal. Every election in the past few years has witnessed death and destruction, along with allegations of election malpractices. And the violence that the state witnessed on Saturday during the polls actually started much before. Party workers and their supporters have been involved in violent confrontations ever since the state announced the polls in June. And this pre-poll violence has resulted in the loss of 17 lives. To contain the violence this time, the Calcutta High Court had ordered the state government to deploy central forces, but the situation remained tense. To know more about this and the impact of such violence on the ruling TMC, my colleague Utsa Sarmin speaks to the Indian Express's Shantanu Chowdhury.
So Shantanu, West Bengal was marred by violence despite the presence of central forces. So could you tell us what exactly transpired during the polls this time?
So ever since the nomination process began, the opposition parties went to the court demanding for the deployment of central forces. But what happened, the state government and the State Election Commission had challenged this Calcutta High Court order and also gone to the higher courts seeking a review of the High Court order. But after that, the Calcutta High Court once again said that central forces will have to be deployed for the election. These actually delayed the entire process of requisition of the central forces and they being deployed for the election. So by the time the Election Commission actually asked or requisitioned central forces, it was a bit late. And as per the State Election Commission, more than 600 companies of central forces they had on the day of the polling. But the opposition is alleging that the State Election Commission did not properly deploy the central forces or did not utilize the central forces in manning the polling stations, manning the polling booths or area domination or for the route marches. These were not done. The Trinamool Congress on the other hand said that despite the presence of central forces, such large number of incidents of violence has taken place. So what was the role of the central forces? So the Trinamool Congress has said that, that despite the central forces being deployed in the state, nothing changed and the opposition indulged in violence.
Okay, and Shantanu, apart from the violence, there were also allegations of malpractices during the polls. Could you talk about that?
Yes, on Saturday there were a large number of incidents of electoral malpractices. Those were reported from various districts of the state, from Kuch Bihar, from Murshidabad, from South Chowbis Pargana district, so on. And in such incidents, we saw in the video footages that ballot boxes were being destroyed by a section of people. They said that the TMC had indulged in vote looting and false voting. So they destroyed the ballot papers. They even threw some of the ballot boxes to the ponds. They poured water inside the ballot boxes and in some places they set fire to the ballot papers. So there are several incidents and several videos doing the rounds in the social media where people were seen running away with the ballot boxes. And apart from that, there were incidents of where bombs were being hurled outside the polling stations to intimidate the voters, to stop the voters from going out and exercising their right. So incidents like these had also took place on Saturday.
Right, and the West Bengal governor also took note of the situation and called for a review, right? So tell us more about that and if there has been any update regarding it.
Well, as the opposition parties raised allegations against the TMC for indulging in violence, indulging in voter intimidation and other electoral malpractices, the governor at first tried to warn the State Election Commission and reminded it to perform its constitutional duty by ensuring law and order is maintained. But as the things were deteriorating day by day, the governor took a decision to hit the areas and see the ground reality. On the day of polling, which is on Saturday, he also visited some areas in North Chobbish Pargana district and also reminded the State Election Commission to take strong action to stop the incidents of violence and maintain the law and order situation. He also urged the people to go out and vote freely. However, these words of advice did not go well with the ruling party, which trained his gun at the governor, saying that the governor is trying to fan violence. He is taking side of the opposition parties and he is not addressing the issues or addressing the incidents of violence where ruling party workers were killed. But the governor also held a telephonic conversation with some of the family members of those TMC workers who were killed during the process. So governor on his part has taken several steps to ensure that law and order is maintained. At first, he opened a peace room to Raj Bhavan where the people general can register their complaints with the office of the governor, who will then transfer these complaints to the competent authorities, which is the state government and the State Election Commission, to take action accordingly. Later, he also set up another committee to monitor the present situation. However, such committees received the complaints and those complaints were later transferred to the state government. However, in ground reality, nothing changed, as we saw yesterday on Saturday that the incidents of violence continue to take place. Even a day after the election on Sunday, we are still receiving some incidents of violence reports from several districts. So the State Election Commissioner Rajiv Sinha yesterday told the reporters that they are getting reports from the district authorities on the poll violence and they will take a decision on ordering repoll accordingly. On Sunday, they are supposed to take a decision on that, as reports are still being coming from the districts.
And Shantanu, what could be the possible impact of this violence? Because in the previous local elections as well, there was widespread violence and which affected the TMC's vote share in the Lok Sabha elections. So is the party concerned that they may face a similar situation again?
Yes, in 2018 panchayat elections, similar incidents of violence had taken place. At least 12 people were killed on the day of the polling, which was held on May 14. And after that, the TMC saw a decline in their vote share and the number of seats during 2019 Lok Sabha polls. After that, the TMC entered into a course correction mode. They had taken the help of the political strategist Prashant Kishore to turn the tides in the 2021 assembly polls, and which actually gave the party result because the party managed to retain power in West Bengal. It won over 200 seats. To be exact, it won 213 seats, defeating a surging BJP and thus, Mamata Banerjee coming to power for the third state term. So the party also tried to make an attempt that the violence is contained in this year's panchayat election as well, but that was far from the reality actually. So right now there are concerns that similarly what happened in 2019 Lok Sabha polls, the TMC may face some repercussions in 2024 Lok Sabha polls, which is a crucial Lok Sabha polls, because at the time 2018 panchayat elections, the TMC had won 34% seats uncontested, which means a large number of voters could not exercise their franchising. And that had reflected in 2019 Lok Sabha polls, because the people who couldn't vote in the panchayat elections voted against the TMC for the large number of violence and intimidation that had taken place at the behest of the ruling party workers. So this time also, those who couldn't exercise their franchise this time, because this time also the TMC won 10% of the panchayat seats uncontested. Although the number came up, but still the incident of violence and voter intimidation is there. So therefore, there are concerned that this could have an impact in the next year's Lok Sabha election.
And next we talk about the defamation case against Rahul Gandhi. Back in March, a trial court in Surat had convicted and sentenced the senior Congress leader to 2 years in jail over his remarks about the Modi surname. During a rally in Karnataka before the 2019 Lok Sabha elections, Gandhi made a remark saying that how come so many thieves share the same common last name Modi?
अच्छा, एक छोटा सा सवाल, इन सब के नाम, इन सब चोरों के नाम मोदी 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 कैसे हैं? ललित मोदी, नरेंद्र मोदी, और अभी थोड़ा ढूंढेंगे तो और बहुत सारे मोदी निकलेंगे.
Now, after the trial court's verdict, he appealed to the Gujarat High Court for a stay on the conviction. But on Friday, the High Court declined it. To know more about the Gujarat High Court's order, here's Utsa again speaking to the Indian Express's Sohini Ghosh.
So Sohini, can you tell us what the Gujarat High Court observed while declining to stay Rahul's conviction?
So prima facie, High Court was of the opinion that number one, it was a serious offence. Secondly, this qualifies as moral turpitude. And third, suspension of conviction is a power that must be exercised in rarest of rare cases, and it cannot be the norm. So these three were the primary grounds on which Gujarat High Court rejected Rahul Gandhi's appeal, seeking a stay on his conviction. Now, the court also took into account that he has more than 10 cases against him, including a new defamation case which was filed following the sentence came on this specific case of him calling Modi surnamed people as thieves. So Rahul Gandhi faces a lot of cases, but conveniently the court did not take into account the fact that a lot of these so-called defamation cases are repetitive. So for example, the case about Modi surname being thieves, similar defamation case has been filed by Sushil Modi in Bihar, and also there's another case by one advocate who is also affiliated to BJP called Pradeep Modi. So in essence, this becomes a repetitive case. So if you count that way, then there are more than 12 so-called defamation cases against Rahul Gandhi.
Okay, so the court observed that because there are so many defamation cases against Rahul Gandhi, they have to take a serious stand on this one.
Correct. The court was basically of the opinion that this guy has a criminal past, has a criminal record. So, primarily that is what the Gujarat High Court stance was while rejecting his plea.
Right, and can you tell us why did the court feel that Gandhi's remarks were a serious offence?
So, one of the key arguments that Rahul Gandhi's lawyer, senior advocate Abhishek Manu Singhvi had put forth was, you qualify an offence as a serious based on the kind of punishment it carries. And this has been laid down through several judgments in the past. And the same were also cited by Mr. Singhvi. And also the court supported its argument through previous judgments as well, that serious offence qualification cannot be purely on the basis of the amount of sentencing period or the maximum punishment that it carries. So according to the Gujarat High Court's reasoning, this qualifies as a serious offence because it was not, the so-called defamatory statement was not against a particular individual but against a large identifiable class. Now, this fact about something qualifying as defamation when your class is not defined or the group is not very composite, this in itself is under challenge in his appeal. So, in a way, the High Court here is also laying down the path of how the appeal going ahead. But that apart, this was one ground on which the court deemed this as a serious offence. Secondly, the court also took into account that, hey, this is a guy who's, a very high stature, someone who's a very senior leader in the oldest political party of India. And thus, someone of this stature has to be responsible while making statements. And so the court was of the opinion that when you know this is your stature and yet you made these kind of statements, this qualifies as a serious offense because you have the power to influence a lot of people and you are basically misusing that power. Thirdly, the court also extrapolated this aspect of influence a little ahead and said that Rahul Gandhi's statement can also be construed as a way of influencing the election, 2019 election. So the court was of the opinion that since Gandhi mentioned the name of our Honorable Prime Minister to add sensation, it was for an intention to affect the result of the election of the candidate of concerned constituency, basically Mr. Narendra Modi, belonging to the political party of the Honorable Prime Minister. This I am quoting verbatim from the order. And thus the present case would certainly fall within the category of serious offence. So broadly, these were the grounds on which the court held this to be a serious offence.
Okay, do we know what the party is planning to do next now that Gandhi is still convicted?
So the party plans to go to Supreme Court, obviously seeking a stay on the conviction. And that is primarily the ground of recourse that they have at this point. Or another option could be going before a division bench of Gujarat High Court, basically 2 judges going an appeal of this order by a single judge. But Abhishek Manu Singhvi did hold a press conference, and over there he mentioned that they are planning to move Supreme Court right now.
Right, and Sohini, considering the upcoming Lok Sabha elections, what does this conviction mean for Gandhi?
So one of the immediate repercussion for him, if he doesn't get a stay on conviction, is that he can't contest next election. And obviously his Wayanad seat has fallen vacant. So that would also go for a bypoll. That apart, also, if this litigation continues, given that his appeal against his main criminal case is also pending, that would also drag on, I'm assuming, for at least 1 more year or 2 more years. So in the immediate future, he can't contest the election. That is the immediate repercussion.
And in the end, we talk about Punjab. Over the last few years, there have been widespread community-led efforts to restore mosques across the state of Punjab. In many of these instances, villagers not only contributed lakhs of rupees for restoration work, some even donated land. And so far, more than 165 mosques have been restored in this manner. Now, to understand the reasons behind this massive statewide mosque renovation effort, the Indian Express's Raakhi Jagga tells us that we first need to take a look at what happened to Punjab's Muslim population after the partition.
So, once the partition was decided or the decision was taken, so we all know that there was mass migration from the both sides of the borders, East Punjab, which we call Indian side, and the West Punjab which we call the Pakistan side. So there were mass migrations which included bloodshedding, communal riots. And if we see the figures, the rough figures which a number of researchers, they have quoted in their stories, in their research papers, around 5.5 million people, Muslims, they migrated from the East Punjab, from Indian Punjab towards Pakistan, and around 4.5 million Hindus and Sikhs, they migrated from Pakistan side, from the West Punjab, which we say, to the East Punjab.
And Raakhi says that since independence, Punjab's Muslim population has plunged from about 40% to 1.93%. And with the Muslim population dwindling, many mosques in the state fell into disuse, and some were even turned into gurdwaras.
If the Sikhs and Hindus, they came from Pakistan, they also needed a place to worship because they left their temples and gurdwaras back there in Pakistan. So around 50% of the mosques, they were converted into gurdwaras or the temples, and the rest, they were abandoned, or a few of them, they were being used by the Muslims who had chosen to stay back in India.
Now, over the years, there has been an increase in the migration of workers to Punjab. And a significant number of these migrant workers have been from the Muslim community who are in need of a place of worship. And this became one of the main factors that contributed to the growing efforts to restore mosques in different villages. And Raakhi says that there isn't one person or a single group leading these efforts across the state.
There is one organization as well, Jamaat-e-Islami. So they are also making their individual efforts. I had spoken to Hanif Khan of that organization, and he told me that around 165 abandoned mosques have been restored in the past few years, maybe 3 to 4 years. And no doubt the organization is making efforts, but otherwise, when it comes in village, there are Muslim population and they interact with each other, or the village sarpanch as well. The entire community sits back and they decide this is how. It's entirely community driven. And there is one organization, no doubt, they help in restoration, and Waqf board, they give some salary to the Maulvis once the mosque is restored. And they also give some reasonable aid as well for the restoration of the mosques if the application is given to them for the restoration.
One such restoration effort was undertaken in the village of Bakhadgarh in Barnala district. Behind the restoration effort was a farmer named Amandeep Singh, who in December 2022 donated 250 square yards for the construction of a mosque. Soon fellow villagers started pitching in money and they were able to raise about 2 lakh rupees. When the foundation stone for the mosque was finally laid, Amandeep said that the entire village shared langar. And Rakhi says there are actually countless more stories across Punjab just like this one.
Once it comes to the restoration of a religious place, everybody starts pulling in. There was one mosque in Jetwal Kala. The land was donated by a Sikh family and the foundation stone was laid by the Shahi Imam of Jama Masjid Ludhiana. And that time they said that we need some money to raise the mosque. And on the spot, 5 lakh rupees was raised by the villagers of the area. And there was one mosque in Bhalur village that is in Moga district. And they had to restore that 1947 abandoned mosque. There was only one Muslim family left in that village. And the day the foundation stone was to be laid, it started raining. And the entire function was organized in the village Gurdwara. And Pala Singh, who was the Sarpanch of the village at that time, he had laid the foundation stone.
And Rakhi says that it isn't uncommon in Punjab for mosques to be taken care of by Sikh families, and that this is a practice that actually dates back to the partition. In fact, she spoke to one such family from Jumbha village in Bhatinda.
They said their great-grandfather, they came from Pakistan, and they were given a place to stay as a refugee in the mosque at that time. Eventually, they stayed there. They started raising their family. But over the years, they realized that this is a mosque and it's a place of worship and it has a sense of, they said that now that Sikh family, the fourth generation of that Sikh family, they are taking care of that mosque and everybody comes there. They come for the prayers and all. And a Sikh family is taking care of mosque, which is a rare case in Bathinda. But we can see plenty of such examples in Punjab.
And according to Rakhi, all of these attempts to protect and restore mosques are rooted in the notion of Punjabiyat and the ideologies of Sikh gurus, which guide people to live in harmony and brotherhood.
In Punjab, we never see an anti-Muslim narrative. We see ourselves more as Punjabis. Punjabis, they keep the religion at back and they are interdependent on each other when we talk about their work. So hence, they respect each other's religious places as well.
You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was hosted by me, Rahel Philipose, and written and produced by Utsa Sarmin, me, Rahel Philipose, and Shashank Bhargava. It was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone who you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Podcast and write to us at podcast@indianexpress.com.